Okay.
Hey everyone, welcome to Modern Forager Stories, week 2. My name's Kristen Blizzard. I am here with my husband, Trent, one of these ways. And what are we going to be doing tonight, Trent?
Gosh, we're going to be talking with Graham and introducing our Modern Forager Stories series here. This is our second week we've done this. And we're trying to interview every week somebody super knowledgeable, way more knowledgeable than us about foraging. And we might be talking about mushrooms or plants or who knows what else we might be foraging.
Yeah, Trent and I are mostly mushroom nerds, as most of you guys know. We do dabble in asparagus and nettles and watercress and things like that. But mostly we're out in the woods for asparagus. So.
Yeah, and here we are with Chef Graham Steinruck. Say hi, Graham.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
All right, so Graham's a Colorado native who recently moved to Olympia, Washington. He is let me get this right, a CDPHE, Certified Wild Mushroom Expert. And he's super knowledgeable about wild plants and about mushrooms and about the kind of combination of the two when they go into your mouth, especially. He has a lot of insights into chefing. Before we start, though, Graham, I just want to put a plug out there. We do have next week, we have HWA Pham, who is a front range forager who is going to hopefully share all kinds of cool insight information with us about the front range. She's super knowledgeable about those mushrooms. And then the week after that, we're going to do another Colorado mushroom hunter, Brian Barzy, and he also knows so much, and I don't know what we're going to hit him up for. But this week, we got you, Graham.
Oh, I'm so excited. I love Brian, too. That's awesome. So, well,
Yay.
introduce myself a little bit to everybody. So yes, I am from Denver, Colorado. I just moved to Olympia, which is really exciting since I'm out in a place that's a lot more moist. And so, I mean, Colorado has an amazing mushroom season, but I think that this is just a lot longer here, which is kind of nice. So I'm excited for that. But I've been a chef for about 15 years professionally. I ran a company called Hunt and Gather where we sold wild mushrooms and fruits and berries and greens and vegetables and nuts and seeds to several restaurants in Colorado. And now I'm still a certified Colorado mushroom expert.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Through the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. So yeah, that's kind of like a little bit of my background, I guess.
How does that work? Tell everybody about what the whole certification means.
So they decided in Colorado, at least, to certify people to identify the wild mushrooms for sale to restaurants and to food establishments. Just due to the fact that identification is so crucial. So they made a program where you could supply your credentials to the state of Colorado, and they would vote with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment to give you a permit to essentially sell them legally. You can also inspect other people's mushrooms so that they can sell them legally.
Now, I think you may be the first certified individual in the state of Colorado.
I actually was, and I was really young when it happened too. And, but I was the first to ever apply for the that they had made that program, but no one had ever actually applied for it.
So a quick test here, Graham. Do you happen to know who the first female in Colorado is to be certified wild mushroom expert?
I'm going to take a wild guess that it's...
She's over there for me. I don't know which direction she is for you.
I don't know what side it is on me. Kristen, yes.
Okay. Hey, before we jump kind of into all the stuff we have to talk about, let's do a little bit of house cleaning for everybody. Welcome. We have a lot of people in the room. We're also streaming on Facebook right now. That's called Facebook Live, and I see people over there. And I just want to tell you how all of you can interact. If you're in Zoom, you can see there's a chat function and a Q&A function. We get to see that. If you chat, you can chat to us or with each other. And you can also ask questions to Graham or anybody through the Q&A. So I encourage you to use that. Go ahead and everybody, if you want to try the chat and say hi. I see HY in there. It looks like you guys can see all three of us on the screen. That's good.
Cool. Orion, Mayumi, Carol. Hey, guys. Good to see y'all.
Ted.
Teddy Spence. Nice.
Nice.
Hi from Oregon. Hi, Oregon.
Nice.
We love you.
Ooh, we got Oregon City too.
City too.
Okay. And then over on, I'm just checking out Facebook. We got some people there. It's a little quieter, I think. Kevin, Rich, people saying hi there. That's cool. So this is our first time on the Facebook Live platform. So fun. Hopefully we will get our technology better this time, and you guys will enjoy a seamless experience. We'll see. So I guess welcome. The other bit of house cleaning, we've got our chat, we've got our questions. If you want social media connections, so let's talk about that. We are on Facebook mostly and Instagram are our two big social media platforms, and we do a lot on our blog as well. Graham, do you want to talk about where you're at? Oh, cheers with my, I have my NA beer.
Cheers.
Tell us, Graham, your social media where people want to see you.
So I have an Instagram if you want to follow it. It's a little bit all over the place, but it's at Instant Gramster, spelled GRAHAMSTER. There it is, right there. So that is me right there.
Okay.
You can kind of see like we've been doing some fun kitchen quarantine projects. I've been trying to list like the ingredients and recipes for things like the injera there, which have been kind of fun just while you're stuck at home. Cook for your friends and family.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's kind of all our house cleaning. Looks like we're doing good on everything here. Let's start the topic here. I think we saved the best for first, and that was going to be Morels.
I figure that's like, again, like mostly what people are looking for in the spring, but you know, also like one of my favorite ingredients. So.
Well, tell us about Morels, and kind of where we should start with them.
So I wanted to first, I guess we're going to start talking about Morels, clear up a couple things. So there's a picture here. We have some blonde Morels. When we talk about Morels, we're talking about the true Morels, which would be in the genus Morkella. They're all going to have fairly similar morphological or visual characteristics. As you can see, they kind of have this honeycomb look to the cap, or what we call a cap, I guess. They're really related to cup fungi. So when you see a Haziza mushroom, which would be like a classic cup fungi, they're actually fairly closely related to them. They have a stalk and this kind of cool honeycomb pattern. When you cut them in half, they'll be hollow, which is one of the main identifying features of Morels. But when we talk about them, we have black Morels, or what we talk about black Morels and blonde Morels. You just saw blondes, and here's some blacks here. So those are kind of the two different like groups, large groups of Morels. We have about they think about 30 to 40 different species worldwide at least that have been identified so far. Some of them are hard to even tell on a microscopic level that they're different. So for beginners and for even experts, often we don't really need to know what species of morel it is, but that it's a morel. So yeah, when we hear, you might hear a lot of different people talk about blacks and blondes, or there's greenies and pinkies. There's a lot of, you know, different types of morels.
Yeah, pickles and zebras.
And tomentosas.
Blacks and fuzzy feet.
So they do have, we also distinguish morels between what we call, in at least the industry, naturals versus burn morels. Naturals being fruiting naturally from a tree dying. When we talk about morels, they're generally fruiting due to an ecological disturbance. So things like a forest fire is a great example where they're living in symbiosis often with trees and or other plants. And when these things die, the mushroom tends to fruit because it's trying to spread its spores, which are essentially its seeds, out into the ecosystem to find new host trees. And especially in times where the new seedlings will be sprouting up, they want to be there. So in the springtime, again, I think why they fruit in the springtime. So yeah, we talk about naturals and burns. Naturals, again, being coming from specific types of trees just dying or being sick. There are some types of morel that will grow just naturally without the tree being sick. In particular, maples will just produce morels without being, without the ecological disturbance part or aspect. I know Trent knows tons about burn morels, and Kristen as well.
Trent's the man.
Yeah, I think more than I do about burns. In fact, they do have a wonderful PDF that just came out that shows you some great burns to check out this year. I think you focus mostly on Colorado, Oregon, BC. Is that right?
Yeah,
it's 11 states, but we don't have to talk about the maps now.
Yeah, let's talk like for morels. If people want to go out and find morels and they're not very experienced, I hesitate to have you kind of describe the habitat because obviously it's different all over the country. Is there advice you can give people that whether they're in Colorado or Washington or even the East Coast to help find morels?
Yes. So there's definitely some things that I was taught that also a lot of people just paid attention over the years and have noticed that there are signals to spring, for example, or signals to when it's time for morels. And a lot of that is based on the other plants and things just around you. So one of the things I look for is things like this here, this picture, lilacs in bloom, is one of the famous ones that the second lilacs are in bloom. That's often a really great signifier of the season being in season.
No matter where you are.
Dandelions going to seed. If people are just about to mow their lawns for the first time or mowing their lawn for the very first time, pasque flowers, Western pasque flower, when you're talking higher.
That's what this is.
Nope, next one.
Next one?
When
Or that's a trillium. There you go. There's a pasque.
There we go. There's a Western pasque flower.
Those are my favorite spring flower, by the way. I love the pasque flower.
They're so fun.
So fun.
You know, Graham, when we go mushroom hunting for morels especially, we'll walk through the woods for hours and when we're done, Kristen's like, what about this flower and that flower? And look at this picture and that picture. And I'm like, there were no flowers in there. What are you talking about? Like, I don't even see these flowers.
I love the flowers.
That's a few of the things I use. Oyster mushrooms sometimes when they're becoming a little too old is another signifier to me. Too old to harvest. That's another signifier of the springtime being ready for morels. Asparagus being a little too old to harvest is another one I use. Often a lot of people use when air temperatures become an average of about 70 degrees during the day. That's another great way to check. And a lot of people use soil temperature because soil temperature is fairly key. And you want kind of like the low to mid 50s is about when morels fruit. So when we say low to mid 50s in soil elevation, in soil temperature, elevation comes into play because soil temperatures are going to slowly work their way up the mountain, for example. So every 1,000 feet, they say, or so, every week to 2 weeks. So often you can there's great online resources with morel maps. If you Google them, there's a lot of them, and they'll show you when people are finding them where, and you can kind of see what they do, which is kind of move from the East Coast and south and then into the north, into Colorado, and more northern locations.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so like if you're in Michigan, you've got like a 2-week window for those morels to come through, and you pick them, and they're great. Here, where we are in the West, you've got a 2-week window at 6,000 feet, and then another 2-week window, and another. Where, last year we were picking morels in August at 10,000 feet. So in a good year.
So it's great when you have elevation to play with because it extends the season and you can kind of chase them up the mountain. Another thing I like to mention when you want to hunt morels is get to know trees.
Mm-hmm.
Because it really does help to know which trees you're looking for in your area. For example, blonde morels in Colorado are mostly growing under narrowleaf or plains cottonwoods, and often that are dead or dying. And that's generally where you're looking there. When you get up higher in Colorado, you're looking more into the aspen groves and mixed pine, and that would be more for what I consider natural blacks or natural blondes, like we just previously discussed. And then there's also burn morels, which are mostly all considered black morels, and those would be more forest fires, like we were mentioning. But I do like knowing your tree species and getting to know, the trees that you're specifically looking for, whether it's elm and ash in the Midwest, sycamore, or cedar and cottonwood in Oklahoma. We more have up here alder and Doug fir. So it definitely varies in your area, but often there's a tree host that that has morels, and you just need to figure out what those trees are in your area and then learn the trees and being able to ID them, because that's really helpful to finding what you're looking for.
We got a couple questions here.
We do. When Graham, when do the blondes sort of turn into blacks from an elevation zone perspective?
I would say right around the 7,000 to 8,000 feet range in Colorado, and a lot of that is because you're transitioning from cottonwood trees to aspen trees in that range. And anything above about 8,000 to 9,000 feet, you don't really see cottonwoods anymore, and you see mostly exclusively aspen, and that's about the same area where you'll see. You'll sometimes see blonde and black morels in the same spot. Just
That's fun.
And aspen in the same area.
Yeah, that reminds me, and a lot of people, you'll talk about morels and you'll be like, yeah, I find them with cottonwood trees, and or name the tree. Obviously, in every part of the country, the tree is different, so that you want to pay attention to your local tree. And then often people are like, well, I find them under azalea bushes that are purple, or I find them growing here, or, I find them at the city dump. It's weird, like people find morels all over the place in the weirdest spots, and then they tell you about them. I find, and I think for people that hear this, like if you want to learn to pick morels, you kind of got to ignore all these little outlier stories about where they are and go right where they should be.
Yeah, you can definitely increase your odds, which I think is really like what you're trying to do is like there's outliers and there always will be outliers, and there's morels that you're like, what is that doing there? But generally speaking, and you know, there was the Black Forest fire, southern Colorado several years ago, and we went down there and found a multitude of black morels, and this is below 7,000 feet. No one wanted to believe me, but they were there just because the habitat was there, because ponderosa pine and lodgepole pine are generally what you're looking for with black morels that are burns in particular, in Colorado. But this varies between every single state. Like the second I got here, you know, we've got different parameters. You still have burns being productive and all that. But
I would say that's like a very front range attitude, man. You know, we're out here and there's not as many pines and pondies, so we tend to find our blacks in the mixed firs, which is perfect. Like two perfectly smart people could correct each other. No, they're in the pines and the pondies. I'm like, no, they're in the firs and the spruces.
Yeah.
Well, we're in different habitats.
Yeah. And that's, I think, it just goes to show how, you know, morphologically, these mushrooms look similar and everything, but they're have their special little ecological niche living with these different trees and fulfilling the same ecological niche in a bunch of different habitats, which I find pretty intriguing.
Yeah, so there's like a lot of different types too.
Yeah, and there's question as to how many there are still. We're still saying there's about 30 to 40 worldwide at least. And they're saying at least 20 about in the United States alone. So there's a lot of different, types. I mean, I've even found them under, like I said, sycamore, cedar, things that you wouldn't think fruit morels, but they do, and I've seen it in person. So
They defy nature, for sure.
They defy nature. A lot of it is, if it's an ecosystem that's in transition or, is going through some kind of large disturbance, there's probably a species of tree there that may or may not have morels, but it seems to be the case across a lot of the country.
I think they have a sense of irony.
For sure they do.
Hey, we have a question here about Oregon morels. It's a really good question. I'm really interested to hear how you answer it. It says in Oregon, we have found one or two morels before, but I'm finding just false morels recently. Maybe too early or too high elevation? Question mark. What do you think?
Too early. Often, actually, I can show everybody here. I just went out the other day, and I don't know a ton about spots yet because I'm new. But we did find quite a few of these little, what we call Verpa bohemica, and we're about to go into false morels here in a second, so everybody can kind of, because this
look at that faker.
So much like a morel. I thought I'd found one, and of course.
Do you have a knife? Can you cut that guy in half right now?
I'm just gonna tear it in half so everybody can kind of see what this looks like inside. Kind of a fragile thing. So, especially up here in the top of the cap here, you can see that it's not hollow. There's a stem that goes all the way to the top of the cap inside of this mushroom. If it was a true morel, it would have been hollow all the way through. This stem, it's kind of hard to show because I broke it, but it's full of fibrousness. It's not hollow. So, Verpa bohemica and a lot of...
Graham. Hey, sure. Graham, hang on a minute. Let me show that again. I had that big screen on.
Oh, shoot.
I want to make sure everybody in your chat, if you're having a problem seeing, just let me know. Hopefully, Carol, you can see okay now.
Can you see that there's a stem. I broke it.
There we go.
You can see it goes all the way up to the top of the cap. So essentially, this is like sitting like this on a stem, you know? It's sitting around it. It's not hollow. And where the base of this should have been attached to the stem, like a morel, which I have one here if we want to look at the difference. This is actually a really cool, Trent and Kristen do these freeze-dried morels, which They're so cool. But this is a true morel. And you can see the cap actually is attached to the stem. It's not going around it or like a sheath. And it's really hard to see because of my camera, but if you looked down inside this mushroom, it's completely hollow. All the whole interior is hollow. But to answer your question, yes, I would say it's early, and soon there's going to be a lot more of them. I think it's just soil temperatures are still a little low. Yeah. But there's people still finding a bunch of morels in Oregon. It's just probably where they're at is a little.
Yeah, I think if you're finding those, you probably need to drop 500 or 1,000 feet or something in elevation, I would guess, or go to a south-facing slope maybe.
So if we want to go into false morels, we could do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so Verpas aren't the only false morel. We got a couple other pictures, I think.
Yeah, let me load those up.
All these mushrooms, I've gotten asked if they're a morel, and I think it's good to show. So there's a true black morel. You can kind of see too that those were a little bit blonde, and the edges are black. So here, this is in Oklahoma, or maybe more Texas. But out east, this is a very common one that people talk about. They call it the red morel. It's not a morel, it's a gyromitra. And they distinctly kind of look like a morel. But when you cut them open, they're full of white fuzz. And especially the interior of the cap, full of this really weird cottony fuzz. They tend to they don't have as much of a distinct like honeycomb pattern. They're more like kind of like a piece of paper that got crumpled up on top of the cap instead of like a perfect honeycomb. Is one of the ways to tell them apart. This is Gyromitra caroliniana, that would be known as, like the eastern giant Gyromitra. These things can be, I've seen like multiple pound specimens of that mushroom. You can see how big these are with him walking away. Here's Gyromitra esculenta group being found in Colorado. That's the cap. So you can see again, it looks like something smashed and kind of like a piece of paper that's smashed and warped instead of the true honeycomb. Will also be fibrous in the middle. Both of those mushrooms are considered edible. I would not recommend them because they contain MMH, which would be an ingredient in jet fuel. It's highly carcinogenic. Yes, it does volatilize with heat, but there's been people who have died from eating this specific mushroom in Europe. So I would just not, it's a hyperaccumulative. So it's one of those things that builds over time in your system. You might be fine for years and then all of a sudden have major, major problems with that mushroom.
Yeah, I'm going to just jump in there and kind of put our company line on this one. Don't eat it. It is, there are species that are edible, and especially if you prepare them correctly. And if you don't know, then don't do it. It's kind of like if you're at the poker table and you don't know who the patsy is, it's you. Well, this could be like this. If you don't know what it is and why you can and can't eat it, you might be the patsy. And I would just recommend be careful. There are also regional differences. I hear people like they're used to, I eat these in Michigan all the time. And then they come to Oregon and they eat a big plate of them and they get sick. So just be careful with these. I don't want to say they're inedible because that's wrong. But they're also not to be taken lightly.
But I also wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on. Let's look at, here we go.
There's Verpa. These are the same ones we just were looking at. This is the patch I just found here in near Mount Rainier here in Washington. These are so much like them. I think these are probably the most similar out of a lot of them. These are eaten a lot in Europe still. There's a lot of people that have bad reactions to this mushroom. Again, I wouldn't recommend it for the reason that some people, it makes them extremely, extremely, extremely ill. Higher percentage than a lot of other mushrooms.
Yeah,
So if you do want to eat it and you don't want to listen to me, eat a small amount of it and
Yeah.
see how you feel. Don't just eat it.
Hang on, Kristen, can you pause? Can you mute yourself, Kristen?
Sure.
So yeah, that's Verpa bohemica. You'll also see one a lot in the eastern part of the United States that's smooth on the outside. It'll look very similar to this, except it'll be perfectly smooth and no ridges. Also a Verpa.
Before we go on to the next one, I have a good example of this mushroom. Probably, sorry about the dogs in the background, everybody.
I love those dogs.
It's like the new coronavirus reality that everybody's got barking dogs. Oh, there you can see him in Kristen's picture behind her.
They're
There.
labradoodles and they're cute.
And so Kristen muted herself just in case they made a bunch of noise. But we had a friend that was here in Colorado, real nice guy, real generous. He's like, oh, I find so many morels, like bags of them. And we're like, oh, cool. And he's like, I'll take you up there. And we were like, yeah. We get in a car and we drive up to a spot that we know really well. We drive by it all the time. We don't usually hunt there in the spring for morels. And we get out and we start finding them everywhere, like he promised. And they were all these verpas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we could have picked bags of them. And he's like, I pick these every year and feed them to my kids. I don't have a problem with them. And we were kind of like, I think we'll just go look for the real morel.
Yeah, and I mean, when you got to risk getting sick, which also I was going to mention too, even though morels are edible, a caveat with that is that there are a lot of people who are extremely allergic to that mushroom, Trent being one of them, unfortunately, that he'll pick all the morels, but he just can't eat them because it makes him extremely ill. And it's something that we know is that your liver has to break down these molecules, and sometimes, not everybody's liver is the same, for example. And a lot of that's based on genetics. Exactly the same thing as like why some people can't eat peanuts. There's allergies, and morels are no different. Neither are any other mushroom. So when you go eat a mushroom and it's your first time eating it, I would be, hesitant to eat a full plate of them unless you.
Yeah, that's good. No matter what the wild mushroom is, don't gorge the first time you try it.
Yeah.
I can speak to that. I mean, I get deathly ill if I gorge on morels.
Accumulate things and you don't know, and we don't know, scientists don't know. So I would just, err on the side of enjoy it because it's an amazing thing in smaller quantities. So Verpa we've dealt with. I don't know. Oh, and here's the one I get sent the most, which is pretty fun. But it's a stinkhorn mushroom. These grow out of an egg. They have a really, really fairly interesting genus named Phallus. This is Phallus imputicus, which means shameless phallus. It's stinky, which obviously Linnaeus had a sense of humor when they named that mushroom. I would say, though, that this is probably the most common. I got morels in my yard, and you don't. It's a stinkhorn. I was like, did you smell it? But they definitely don't smell good. They exude that smell because they use flies to spread their spores. So the flies smell something that smells rotten. They come and crawl all over it and then spread the spores to new habitats.
Yeah.
And ecosystems.
But it's possible this little guy right here might be delicious, though, right?
So the eggs are eaten. Stinkhorns are eaten in a lot of Asia, in particular. That netted stinkhorn, that beautiful one, you've probably seen slow motion captures of it.
Yeah.
Beautiful net around it that grows in bamboo forests, but that's eaten as well. This is an edible mushroom, especially in the egg stage. In some countries, it's considered a delicacy. I can't get my mind around it. It's like, I'm just going to say It's like a testicle, and then it's gooey and slimy. I'm not. I mean, I should. You know me. I should just try it, right? I mean,
Yeah, just try it, Graham. It'll be
I would
delicious.
totally try it.
Next time you and Trent are together, we can cook stinkhorns.
Stinkhorn eggs.
Stinkhorn eggs. Okay.
Oh,
I have faith. I have faith Graham could make it taste delicious. I know that.
Graham, we got a shout out on Facebook from Olympia, Anna Margaret.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Facebook guys. I'm trying to watch closer. I didn't realize you were asking some questions in there. So I'm over here like looking at your thread. So say hi in there if you have any questions. We'll try to answer them.
So yeah, that's Phallus imputicus, the stinkhorn, not a morel.
Uh-huh.
Next.
Possibly out of.
What do we got here, Graham?
So this is actually took this picture right by Evergreen State College in Capitol Forest. This is Helvella, I believe longissima, because of its kind of felty at the bottom. But I wanted to kind of show how Helvellas, they again look like a morel, but they don't at all. Kind of looks like another, again, piece of paper that's gotten all funky on the top of a stem. But, you know, again, that one actually is related to morels distantly. And some people eat it. It's called the elven saddle, but it is not a morel.
You know, I picked one of these. We were in California at Soma at that Sonoma mushroom camp. And I picked one of these, and some people are like, "Oh, you're not going to eat that," and other people are like, "Oh, that looks good, eat that." And I ate it, and it was good. Kristen didn't want anything to do with it. I'll just say for the record, I ate the whole thing, and she did that, like not eating it. But it didn't make me feel bad, and so I might try some more of those elfin saddles.
The Helvella elastica and similar.
Yeah, it wasn't that one. It was maybe the Lacuna.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks a lot different than that one.
Yeah, those are neat too. If you catch them, pick them, and hold them up in the sunshine, or even you could put a lighter underneath them.
Yeah,
they spew spores, and it makes a really good slow-mo picture opportunity with your iPhone.
Super fun.
If it hasn't been windy and you go touch that thing, wait like 1 to 2 seconds. It's really strange, but at the ends of all of these little cells it's like a gun. They like put all of them in a chamber, all these spores, on like almost like a hair-like protrusion, and then it goes bang, and they shoot out at something like Mach 5 or 10 out of these things. But you'll see them explode and shoot a huge cloud out.
Yeah, it makes a really good photo opportunity with the slow-mo.
Worth it.
Somebody's asking what's a good time to hunt for morels in southern Michigan. Like, I guess we're not there, but probably now.
Like about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
A little less than, but yeah.
We're getting close.
A good thing to always do for anywhere you are, I would say, is check Facebook groups. Mm-hmm. Join the local Mycological Society groups, join any local mushroom groups in the area, and just watch what people are doing, because people love to tell you when they're finding mushrooms. And when you see that first 1 or 2 posts, it's like a ding, 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 time to go check.
What really helps is like go to a soil temperature map.
Yeah, that too. Yep.
And especially they do them, the USDA does a weekly crop bulletin. That's what it's called. And it's for people planting corn. That's been one of the most useful, I shouldn't even give that away, but it's one of the most useful things in the Midwest, to find what your soil temperatures are, which need to be in about 50 degrees in your area. So
weekly crop.
Finding morels, 53, you're going to be thick in them. 55, they're going to be huge, and 58. And that's across the board everywhere I've been. So the other thing you can do is go buy a digital meat thermometer.
Yeah.
This is great. And you go stick it in the ground in your mushroom spots, and it'll tell you what your soil temps are. Take an average in the sun and the shade, and you'll kind of get an idea of where you're at. But I mean, that's all I've used that to my advantage all over the place.
Somebody just asked, is higher than 55 degrees too late?
Yeah, 55 is a little too late.
Yeah.
50 is all right, spot on.
Yeah, although as you move around, you might find some warmer spots at 55, but you're going to
Yeah.
find some at 49 too.
And it's interesting, like when I would find morels, when I had my digital meat probe, I would stick it next to them, you know, and just see what the temp was. And you would find that like ones that were really large, the soil temperatures are in the 55-degree range, or maybe a little bit lower than that, but right in there. And the ones that are really tiny, it's like 49, 50. So, and like you'll think about it, like in one area, you'll have shadier locations, in some areas sunnier. Some places are northern facing, so they're colder. Southern facing can be warmer, so that's going to warm up quicker.
Yeah, I think last week
This one
Orion's suggestion was variably between 50 and 60 degrees.
Because also
Yeah.
black morels do kind of like more of the upper 50.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
That guy is in a burn right there that you're trying to
yeah,
show.
and that was one of the warmer ones that we saw too when we were doing those pictures. I didn't put that up there to imply that's the right temperature, but we
right in there, you know, it's in the 50s.
I have a bunch of pictures here. There's a lot of them 49, 50, 52. That was about as hot as it got though.
53 is one of my favorite temperatures. Like, they're usually big enough that you're like, whoa.
Okay. Now we got a question on the question. I think is always a perforated bag ?
So I like to put it this way, and I think Michael Quo's example is the best example, is you take an apple from an apple orchard, is it a problem? Probably not. Did you take seeds with you? Yes. You know, did they need all of the seeds? Probably not. Did you take seeds? Yes. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Is take only what you need. That's really, to me, more important than, you know, bags. Because like, when you touch a mushroom, a cut mushroom explodes spores when you touch it. So often what I do is when I pick a morel, I do a little din, 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 and you can watch it. It goes.
Hey, Trent, can you pan back to the speakers now for a little bit? Because I think people can't see Graham talking when we're on the... There we go.
Crush your mushrooms, because what happens is as the bag gets fuller and fuller and fuller, they all start to have weight and they start to do this. And the more and more and more you put in there, they just, and you're kind of moving them around there, they just shred them apart. I'm very much a fan of Trent and Kristen's bags that they have made that are the custom mesh bottomed bags that are more solid sides, or a basket. Those are more my go-to, because the basket or something that has solid sides can support the mushroom load. And in particular, porcini are heavy too. They'll just crush each other in a mesh bag if you get a lot.
I like the mesh because the dirt falls out the bottom too.
Yeah, so I do like the mesh bottomed bags. So like just a straight like laundry sack, mesh sack. They just shred the mushrooms. They're not really I do think with the spores, if you can let them go, you know, as you're walking around in those areas, that's probably good for the future.
Okay, so we have another question from Amy. It says, do Verpas and natural morels grow in the same places? I'm hunting along the Columbia River right now and have found Verpas, but not naturals yet. So Amy, I assume Columbia River, you're probably near Portland. The blondes are going to go crazy there, like anytime.
It's just a little too early yet.
A little too early, which is, you know, it's kind of nice. We're just about to get into them. It's like, this is the perfect time to be talking about it.
Yeah. There's a lot of morels in that.
Because, and I think whatever the other one's name is, it's not Elastica, but those two come out classically right before the morels. To also go into a couple more things that I always look for, nettles should be from your ankle to your knee. That's just always like they're in that range somewhere. If they're above your knee, it's too late. And if they're below your ankle, it's too early. It's just always somewhere in between, like you're in your shin somewhere, right when they're annoying to walk through. It's about the time morels are out. Violets in flower is another one. Fiddleheads will be out. So we're like right on the cusp. I also just locally, if red buds are in bloom, someone's planted red bud, or if your apple blooms are falling off the trees and they're blowing around the street, we've got that right now here in Olympia. And I'm like, it's right now. Like this is the time it starts. And there is always landscape morels before that too. But yeah, the bulk of the season's like upon us right now.
Just about,
lucky
so keep
you.
looking. Yeah, keep looking, Amy. Go out next weekend again.
We got a couple more weeks in Colorado, I would say.
Yeah, but you're right behind us. It's a
yeah.
thing.
Maybe Front Range is hitting here pretty darn soon, but in the mountains, a couple more weeks, I think.
Hey, let's
first week in May, almost always. I can find my first ones.
Let's take a look at the next slide here. It kind of relates.
So these are oyster mushrooms. A lot of you are probably familiar. This is Pleurotus pulmonarius, the one that grows on cottonwood in Colorado. This was a particularly large cluster. That one that's in the middle there was probably about 3 feet across.
Wow.
To show how big this was, but it was ginormous. But that's about the time you see morels, right around the time that oysters are big and they're in charge and they're out. For people who have never identified oysters, the easiest way to tell oysters and know you have an oyster is they are always growing from dead wood. Always check to see if your mushroom's growing from wood or if it's growing from the soil by digging the mushroom up, because that has messed a lot of people up in different ways. Yeah, so the nature of the mushroom, as in is it growing on wood or is it not? This one's growing on wood. It's always dead wood or maybe dying wood. And they'll have this kind of oyster shell-like pattern to them. They also have a cap that is offset from the center of this. So a normal mushroom would be like this. These are more like this, offset like a shell, where the stem comes from one of the sides of the mushroom and makes a radial shell-looking pattern. They'll also usually almost always have a lilac gray to kind of whitish, not white, but lilac gray.
Hey, Trent, people can't see Graham, don't forget, when he's kind of describing things with his hands, if you have the big picture up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess
we can see all of us, but they can't.
They can't see all three of us?
No, I don't think so. Not when you have the big photos up.
Mushroom and oysters like.
So pan to Graham. He's doing funny things right now. Yeah. You gotta show Graham. You gotta do that again.
Do it again.
Yeah. That's a regular mushroom.
No, my face is the stem, but yeah. On the side of it. In the center.
Good.
They'll always have decurrent gills. So that would mean gills run down the stem. They don't come to the stem and stop. They go down the stem too.
You were talking about spore prints there, weren't you? For a minute?
There's the spores coming. So if you're doing a spore print too, and it's your first time, you cut the mushroom off and you lay the gills on a piece of paper, gill side down. And sometimes you want to cover that with a bowl or like a jar or like a glass to keep them from drying out. And so the wind doesn't blow the spores too much as they fall. Wait overnight and use a white piece of paper. In the morning, you should have a spore print. That's one of the most classic ways to ID mushrooms is knowing the color of the spore deposit. In this case, it would be lilac gray or slightly whitish.
Okay, I was just going to show here, Graham, in this picture, you can even see the spores falling from the mushroom above on the top, these light colored.
That's the color
Grayish.
of the spores.
Yeah.
So yeah, when those are getting older, that's kind of like the end of, well, that's the beginning of morel season to me. Um, let's see. When I cook oyster mushrooms, I tend to either saute them just like, like every other mushroom. I love breading and frying them. They're great to pickle, which Trent and Kristen and I have pickled quite a few mushrooms together this last summer.
So good.
They're great. They make a great pickle. One of my favorite recipes is an oyster mushroom po' boy. You just fry the bread and fry the mushrooms, put them in a sandwich.
We have a question about bugs. How do you deal with maggots on oysters and morels?
I think that's kind of like, I like Ed Lubo's way of saying it from Colorado Mycological Society is it's up to you how many bugs you're willing to consume. I do believe that it's not really that big of a problem at a certain extent. But there is a level when once you see discoloration in the mushrooms in like little tunnels and they're turning brown, that's signs that there's bacterial contamination due to the excrement of the bugs. So I wouldn't eat that then.
It's kind of personal preference, right? You hear everybody talk about tiny bacon, some people love it, some people won't touch it.
Extra protein, because there's always a couple bugs that you just, I don't really worry about it too much. I mean, if you figure that there's an allotted amount of bug parts in raisins, the USDA.
Thank you, Graham.
It's a pretty normal thing to have bugs on your food.
Wow.
I don't like my bugs. I am pretty crazy about cutting around the bugs.
I mean, and it's all preference. Like some people will not eat it if it has a hole in it. Now, the thing I'll do a lot of times is if they're a little buggy, I tend to dehydrate them because the bugs will kind of eject out of the mushroom in the dehydrator on the ground. And then you can just, grind up the mushrooms for powder.
Or give them away to other people.
Your family and friends.
Yeah, warning to my family and friends.
You get the buggy ones.
Yeah, I don't eat the buggy ones. I give them away.
I want to tell you guys too, if you go to Whole Foods and buy that $28 tiny bag of mushrooms, make sure you inspect it because guess what you're going to see? Bug holes.
Disgusting. No, I've gotten them before at the store where I've dumped out the bottom thinking it's porcini powder and it's all maggots. And I'm like, oh my god, like I thought mine were bad, but the ones at the store are bad. Like,
yeah,
for sure.
But yeah, I often dehydrate my buggy mushrooms, or I'll cook them and freeze them. That way they don't just get worse.
Okay. We have I say one more question. Somebody, Anna Margaret over on Facebook just reminded us that peanut butter has a lot of bugs in it. I just didn't need to know that. Let's just change the topic. We had a quick question on what tools to take foraging besides a basket. Why don't you answer that, and then we'll move on to green things.
So I think that there's two schools of thought with morels. One is scissors. The other is a knife. If you're picking a lot of morels, scissors are amazing. If you've ever been to the point you want some scissors, they're incredible. And it's a pretty quick way to do it. I do recommend cutting morels off at the ground because the sclerotia, if you unearth it, if you pull them up out of the ground, you're actually diminishing yields for the next year. So make sure you're always slicing them off at the ground. I do not brush morels. Other mushrooms I would bring like a brush, but morels are just kind of like
what?
Anyway,
I brush the shit out of them.
I'm a tapper. I tap the dirt out.
I tap. I blow on it. I brush it.
Yep. You got a blower.
Yep. And in the woods, you hear this.
At the same time, to be fair, we are often hunting burn morels, which are more dirty.
Yeah. Well, and the moss makes the best brush. I've realized this, especially in Oregon, Washington. The moss here is super floofy. But the other day I forgot mine, and I'm like, just brushing them off on the moss. I'm like, what the hell have I been doing this whole time carrying a brush around? Like, I just could have just been, brushing them off on the moss. There we go.
Nature gives you the tools you need.
Yeah, you could even, if you really want to be invasive, you could pick a little bit of it, and,
I find it strange that you say that, Graham, because I've spent a fair bit of time in the kitchen with you, and I will say one thing about you is you clean the heck out of your mushrooms. I've seen you slave away at the sink like cleaning a lobster mushroom, and I'm like, wow. I mean, it was clean 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, I think that sand diminishes the experience of a wild mushroom. And so since I've worked in fine dining for so long, we're kind of like, well, if you're going to pay a bunch of money to eat this wild thing that's really incredible, the last thing I want you to do is chew on a bunch of sand, which I tell people sometimes when I'm being lazy. I'm like, it's like clams. Like, you just don't chew too hard. Like steamer clams. My dad's from the East Coast, but like, just don't chew. But I also, I do wash them more when I'm trying to like impress people.
Okay. All right. On that note, let's move to the green now. Finally, I'm gonna change the screen here.
All right.
Or you can. Let me just do that. There we go.
Mushrooms behind you earlier. That was hilarious. I don't know what happened to that.
I can put it back. Kristen doesn't.
No.
She thinks I look dorky when I do it.
Like,
No, it's like a weird, trippy, strange mushroom land.
It's gonna happen.
It is 420, people.
Happy 420.
Happy 420.
So, stinging nettles. Speaking of green. So the best way to ID it is to grab a hold of it. Just kidding. So you can see here they have this kind of almost like a shiso leaf. They kind of have like a sort of squarish, stem, offset leaves, very fuzzy and hairy. If you touch it, it will sting you. I think a lot of people have had that experience. It's actually the same chemical compound as what is in an ant bite or sting. So that's why it gives you that little welt. It's the same thing.
How do you pick it?
I tend to use either a set of tongs and scissors or gloves and scissors. I was talking to you earlier, I think part of the experience of stinging nettles, we have a thing here where it's like a rite of passage where
Yes.
we whip each other with stinging nettles on the behind. And then you stop thinking about it for the rest of the day. Like, you've been lit up by stinging nettles. Your hands are kind of like...
Because your butt's on fire and you can't think about it anymore.
The same thing in the spring. I think it's good for you. I think that it gets your immune system rocking. Like,
wow. It's like forager hazing.
You get a little giddy. Everyone starts screaming and yelling. But yeah, it's a rite of passage. But yeah, I do wear gloves because they'll just get you randomly through the gloves too. Sometimes I'll wear like 2 sets of rubber gloves on my left hand or whatever hand I'm going to hold them with, and then I'll snip and set them in because you got to be a little gentle with them. They're definitely could mess you up.
Yeah. Well, tell us about cooking them because I got a good picture here.
So a lot of people cook them. A lot of people blanch them or saute them to remove the stinging. Here at the Milroy House in Olympia, they do them raw. You just grind those things up raw. And I was skeptical, and it's actually a little intriguing because you get a little bit of tingle, but it's not like what you'd think, like stinging the crap out of you. I use the stems and all, lemon juice, oil, blend that into a puree paste, and then I add hemp seeds or another type of nut, more olive oil, more lemon juice, garlic, and salt. That's about it. I have a recipe on my Instagram if you want to go check it out, just for basic ratio. But it's essentially to taste. I put a little lemon zest in mine and pepper, but yeah, that's essentially the recipe there. But we love that at this house. Like we went through a half-gallon jar this week.
Wow.
For of nest.
Impressive.
But you know, you can put it on anything. You can put it on a sandwich. You can put it in your mac and cheese. You can put it on your eggs in the morning. So.
And it's really good for you.
Really good for you. Actually, stinging nettles have been used for hundreds of years to treat painful muscles and joints, eczema, arthritis, and anemia. Many people use them to treat urinary problems due to an enlarged prostate, urinary tract infections, hay fever, or in a compress or cream for treating joint pain, sprains or strains, tendinitis, insect bites.
So when are we going to find nettles, and how tall is too tall for a nettle?
So that's kind of up to you. I like nettles at all ages. Some people completely disagree with me and think they need to be young. As they get older, the stinging increases and they get like meaner and meaner and meaner and meaner to deal with, and woodier in the stem. You'll see them probably about, I don't know, like March to June in a lot of the country. And then they kind of move up in elevation where even in Colorado, I see them in August at 10,000 feet, 12,000 feet. So yeah, they live in a lot of ecosystems and yeah, mostly springtime. And I usually try to pick them before they get to my knee.
Do you ever preserve them?
Sorry?
Do you ever preserve them for enjoying
tea
later in the summer?
Dry them for nettle tea, which is a lot of the things we just talked about. People use nettle tea. I like to blanch and freeze them. I think that's a better way of dealing with them because you save a lot of the essential, the medicinal character of the plant by not drying it out. But yeah, you can definitely use it in tea. I also just freeze the nettle pesto in jars. And then you pull it out throughout the year.
Oh, that's
Nettle
a good idea.
tea is beautiful, by the way. It makes this crazy dark green tea, and it's really quite delicious.
Yeah, it's like it's fresh and spicy. It's really good.
Yeah.
All right, let's hop to the next plant here. See what we got coming up.
Yeah, we got to get to the fiddleheads.
Yeah, we're going to fiddleheads. So we had questions about this earlier before we even did it. So fiddleheads, you've got two different main ferns that people are collecting. There's, I think, something like 6 different ones in the U.S. people collect. There are poisonous ferns. They do not look a lot like a fiddlehead fern. This would be what a lady fern, which is what here in the West Coast is what a lot of what we're collecting here is lady fern. Has this kind of like brown papery outside. It's not all black or a weird white coating. It's just these little brown hairs. Otherwise, they look essentially like the top to a fiddle, hence the name. Otherwise, in the East Coast, we're talking about ostrich fern, which would be more what they see out there. It's going to look a little bit different because they're different species, but used the same way. They're going to kind of have a little bit of a U-shaped stem when you look at it, instead of
like a celery.
Yeah, like a celery, a little bit U-shaped. A little bit of brownish hairs. I always recommend that you do cook and blanch these first before eating them. They do give people upset stomach sometimes raw, and they do give people upset stomach just anyways. Like some people just can't eat them. They're a lot like an asparagus. I've got some here. You can put me on the main screen, Trent.
Yeah, Trent, pan to Graham.
Oh, yeah. Duh, thanks.
I've got some big ones here to kind of show you here.
Those are so pretty.
He's got some big ones in there. He's showing them. Like, oh, yeah, so that's, you can see they kind of spiral in.
Yep. And there's that kind of celery indent right there.
Yep, and I can try to show you the end of it. Kind of U-shaped. Can you see?
Yeah.
They taste pretty good. They have a snap to them. They're a little crunchy, and they have a real nice fresh flavor.
Pretty nutty. I think they're a little nutty.
I don't know, I probably did like 10 minutes of collecting. I would say that with fiddleheads, you do want to be a little careful of over collecting fiddleheads. You can cut off too many of their little brand new leaves, which is what these are, and kill the plant. So you do want to take about only a third to half of their new leaves so that the plant can continue to grow.
Do you have a favorite preparation for fresh ones?
My favorite thing to do is pickle them. We've got some great pictures.
Oh,
Pickled ones.
here's a jar.
Got some of, yeah, I gave you those. Those are the East Coast there.
Can you guys see this jar of pickles? I think I have to be talking.
No, you can see them.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So I love to pickle them, preserve them that way. It's a great, I think they're a great, fun little charcuterie item to pull out later in the year. Yep, there's the same jar when I made them last year.
What if you want to eat them like tonight though? If you pick some fresh and you want to take them home and eat them, what do you do?
Blanch them and serve them like asparagus. A little butter is just a great way. The simplest way is just a little butter. I love putting them in pasta. Like I'll blanch them, cook a little pasta. If I have a little Morels, I'll sear them up. A little nettle pesto.
All right.
So yeah, I love fiddleheads with nettles because you're usually finding both in the same place. You get a lot of questions if you find ostrich fern in Colorado, and I have heard that it grows in Colorado. The only place I've seen it is in Rocky Mountain National Park, where you may not pick it. It's really rare in Colorado, and I would leave all specimens alone. Go somewhere where fiddleheads are more common.
By the way, for everyone else, that's one of the first times I've heard you say, I've heard it grows here, but I've never found it. Usually, if anybody has found it in Colorado, Graham has.
They do search things, but I mean, I'm glad you get to talk to Brian Barzy. That gentleman is a magical person.
Hey, Graham, there's one question.
Magical places in Colorado that are like, these are some of the only,
Can you clarify on the lady fern? Someone says they're a bit confused. Were the lady ferns on the West Coast edible?
Yes.
Okay.
They're not as sought after as the ostrich fern. Some people will tell you no, that they're not, but from everything I can tell, and I eat them myself, they're, I think they're pretty much the same thing. They do have a little bit of bitterness. Some people do get stomach upset. So I would say, like, don't gorge yourself on them. Bracken Fern is similar, where it grows here. It's eaten all over Japan. It's eaten in China. But then in the U.S., they tell you not to eat it because it could hurt you. I don't really think that's true. I do think they're completely safe. But I would say just, like, don't, eat.
Yeah, I grew up eating Bracken Fern, and we eat it when we find it. But other people say it can be bad for you.
You never know. It could be true. There's a lot of history with it being eaten, so I feel like it's. Yeah. I mean, there's cyanide in apples.
Hey Trent, can you show the picture of the ostrich fern again? And Mayumi is saying she eats it all the time. You just need to treat it right. Thanks, Mayumi.
Cook it a little extra long, like don't cook it till it's mush.
I think she meant like talk nicely to it, treat it with respect.
She is nice. She's so nice.
Treat it with respect is a great way of putting it.
Okay, let's keep.
I mean, you saw all those. That was for, events and the helping with the cookbook. That's like, we still have a few. I mean, they're not like something that we're just like gorging on, but they're a really special treat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Trent, so one more time back to the fern photos, and I want you guys to clarify which is which, because we have confusion.
They're the same.
Lady fern.
Ostrich fern and lady fern. Which one's which?
Lady fern cleaned up.
So we don't have any ostrich fern photos.
Ostrich fern are the pickles.
Oh, these ones I have?
Mm-hmm.
Those, okay.
See, look at this middle jar here at the top. See how U-shaped that one is?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, up, higher.
Up, scroll so we can see the top of the, there you go.
That one. See how it's like this?
It's like a channel.
Yeah.
definitely ostrich. It has more, yeah, curl to the stem.
Has a deeper groove.
Deeper groove.
Okay. All right. Are we good there? Can we?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the next photo you have, I just wanted to briefly mention, this is wood sorrel. You find that, or sorrel, you'll see this right about the same time here in the Pacific Northwest. It's a type of oxalis. It'll kind of have this beautiful 3-leaf clover to it. And they're this beautiful, like acidic, bright taste to them, kind of like green apples. It's kind of how I liken them. I love to throw them in salads.
It's like a garnish. You put just a little bit in, or
Yeah, they do contain oxalates, which is partly what's causing the sour, which does degrade calcium. So like eating them is bad for your teeth, eating a lot of them. But you can eat them. They're safe. Just don't, you know, gorge yourself on them all the time. But I love them. They're a great bright element to add to salads as well.
And what are they called again?
Wood sorrel.
Wood sorrel. Okay, cool. What do we got here?
Miner's lettuce.
Miner's
This is
lettuce.
really common out here in the Northwest. You do see it in Colorado too. It tends to like wetter locations. It tends to like to be near a body of water. Here in the Northwest, not so much. It'll grow just out because it's so wet. Yeah, thanks for zooming in. You can kind of see these long, tall shoots. They do these 2 offset leaves, and they'll put a spray of white flowers out of the center of that. Google if you need better photos. These are all from my phone in the last week, and I didn't have time to get to better stuff. But yeah, that's miner's lettuce. Its genus is Claytonia. It's related to purslane. It's one of my favorite greens. It's super, super just like sweet, crunchy, not bitter like a lot of greens are from the wild. It's just a wonderful little, treat, a little crunchy.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think, Kristen, we had that when we were there last spring, didn't we? We picked some of that miner's lettuce with Joseph.
We did. We sure did.
And it was
Yeah.
delightful. It was just clean and like make a whole salad out of it. Kind of good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of tartness to it too, like on its own, like a little bit of tartness. Or
Do you cook this?
Yeah, it's like almost seasoned itself.
Do you cook it, or do you have any preparations you recommend?
It's a lot like spinach. It got its name, miner's lettuce, because California gold miners were eating it to ward off scurvy because it is high in vitamin C during the gold rush. That's partly why it got its name. I usually see it April through Mayish, maybe into June. It does contain oxalates as well. So does spinach. So just don't, that's almost saying don't eat spinach all the time is what I'm saying. But yeah, it does contain oxalates. So just don't eat tons of it. I wanted to mention too, we have some pictures coming up here of Spring Beauty, which is closely related there, right? That's another Claytonia. These make this beautiful edible tuber. You can see this they're about the size of like a penny, maybe a quarter. When you do pick them and take the tuber, you are pulling the whole plant up. So be aware of that. But yeah, they have those same similar flowers, longer like lanceolate leaves. And I've got another picture coming up of their flowers. But yeah, they have this cool little tuber. It's like a little like chestnut nutty potato. They're really delicious. There's little tubers there.
How big is that little tuber?
About the size of a quarter to a dime. Nickel. They're not very big. And to collect enough to like make a meal. But you could collect a little bit, like a little handful, and check them out. They're really neat.
Is this one here?
No, that.
Rosea is, I believe, the genus here. But
Is this the same plant though? It's the flower of that.
Flower there. You can see it's a lot like a miner's lettuce flower. Looks almost the same there. But yeah, they have that cool little edible tuber. You see them a lot in the Rockies. You see them a lot in Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, all the way into up here in Washington. You see them too. Oregon.
Hey, Trent, can you quickly show the photo of the collection bag? Someone asked earlier to see a picture of it. I think it's right in that set right there.
Yeah.
The Modern Forager collection bag.
I'm looking.
Yeah, it's got some miner's lettuce in it, actually. But
yeah,
they were kind enough to give me one, and it's
Oh, there it is.
way to, like, forage is with those bags, to be honest. They've got 4 little compartments, which I'm always picking more than, like, one thing often. And then they got these great mesh sides and mesh bottoms, adjustable. I'm like addicted to the thing.
Trent, there's one on the floor behind you, I believe, actually.
Yeah, it's
the
got
red one.
Water bottle clips. I love them. So that was watercress.
Okay, here, let me show it here. Hang on, let me stop the share here. Okay. Here we go. Looks like this. It has 4 quadrants. And then the sides, 2 of the sides are mesh. And then 2 of the sides are kind of more fabricy. And these are made from upcycled materials. They used to be Big Agnes sleeping pads that we were able to upcycle. They had some factory seconds they gave us to build this bag with.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I love those bags. And I've been using them a lot to collect greens. So let's go into watercress, which would be the next. I'm just going to kind of blast through some things so we can get to the end of
Okay, good.
stuff and do questions here. But yeah, watercress would be my next picture. It's kind of nerdy. It's just me there with some watercress in a watercress patch. There's several different types of watercress you're going to find here in the U.S., but I see, like, upland cress more often than I see Barbarea genus more than I see, which I always want to say, like, Barbarea, Queen of the Universe. Have you seen that movie? But Nasturtium officinale is generally what you see in Europe, and is like the classic watercress. So it is related to nasturtium, which is also a mustard. It's very
Spicy.
very spicy, especially as it starts to flower. It gets even spicier. One of my favorite plants to collect. I use it for pestos a lot.
So good as pesto.
Yeah, it's great. Like, just even as a soup, a lot of it, watercress soup is really good. And as a garnish, fresh eating is really great. Do be careful of what water you pick it in, because water can be stagnant, for example, and have fecal coliforms and or liver flukes, mess you up. So you really want to make sure that you're collecting it from a clean water source. You can also soak it in a baking soda solution, just like quick rinse, soak, rinse, and wash, and that will get rid of kill a lot of the things that.
What about white vinegar solution? Would that work too?
Another way of doing it. I've noticed that baking soda tends to not bruise up and mess up the watercress as much.
Ah, okay.
It is
Good
so
tip.
feeling, so you want to rinse it off when you. They say about 10% baking soda solution.
And if you're looking for this, I think right, is it running water, spring creeks, in the water? Like, you'll see these plants down in the water.
Almost always growing out of the water, or like shallow water. Yeah, that's usually not very fast running. You want to make sure it's running. Don't pick watercress out of stagnant water. Make sure it's running. Watercress is really high in calcium, manganese, phosphorus, potassium, vitamin K, A, B, C, and E. So it's extremely beneficial to be eating. A lot of those as well.
Real quick, somebody asked for a watercress close-up. Ira did. And Ira, I know you got a question earlier. We're going to get to that at the end, I think. A watercress close-up. I don't think we have one.
But I would just Google it. Look up upland cress and watercress. They're all going to look really similar. They're all going to have these little white to yellow flowers with 4 petals. And yeah, they'll have these kind of like little rounded leaves.
It's pretty easy to identify, especially when it's in running water and it's a little spicy.
It's a lot spicy.
A lot spicy. All right. Let's we got about 10 minutes left, Graham. Let's move on to our next
Asparagus, I just
favorite plant.
Really quick. These were brought in mostly from Asia, but now escaped into the wild. Resides in edges of agricultural fields, irrigation ditches. Usually easy to spot later in the season. You can see as they get bigger and they start to flower. It's easier to see it as it gets older. So I'll remember those spots for next year often. And that's how I have some of my best spots, is looking for it when it's gotten too big.
Yeah, August is when you hunt asparagus.
Yeah.
I have show and tell.
Oh, and then Kristen's got a really big one there, a dried one, just to give you an example of how big these things will get.
Can you guys see this? It's a really big one. I don't know if you can see it very well. Here's the end part too.
So that's what I look for, is like the big old asparaguses, and those will kind of show you where the young ones are too. So you can kind of check for those big dead ones and try to find that. I think a lot of people know what asparagus looks like.
You can even see them right here in this picture. You can see all these dead old asparagus in the background back here. I'm pointing with my fingers like people can see that.
There's another picture too that might show it better.
It's a little better. Kristen added. That's in Oklahoma, if you couldn't read that.
Give me just a minute. I'll pull that other picture up in just a second.
Okay, cool. So, asparagus, keep your eyes peeled. If it starts to get old like that, it's starting to be morel season. So I'd say asparagus season is on or coming soon right now.
Asparagus is just starting in Colorado.
Yep, just about.
They're babies in Glenwood.
Here's what we want. And I think we usually start seeing asparagus before the morels. And then we're still picking them after the yellow morels have passed through. Like the asparagus season kind of wraps completely around the local morel season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like asparagus and morels right together. Those are some beauties. I'm gonna tell you guys, once you've eaten wild or feral asparagus, you will never want it from the grocery store again. It's so much sweeter and just like tender.
It's amazing.
Yeah, just incredible. I like to pickle asparagus. One of my favorite ways to save it. Trent did some amazing freeze-dried asparagus that was just incredible. But yeah, that's just my 2 so far favorite ways to preserve it.
We have a favorite way. You should tell them, Kristen, how we do it. It's the best.
Oh, it's actually on the Modern Forager blog. There's an article called it's called Finding Asparagus in Colorado or something like that. But there is an asparagus and avocado soup that we make, and it has maybe like 6 ingredients: asparagus, avocado, lemon, white onions, and stock, I think. And it is to die for. It's awesome. Just search for asparagus on our website. There you go. It's right in there.
Well, there it is right there.
There it is, yeah.
And then we freeze it. We harvest a lot, like I won't say how much, a lot. And we freeze it in vacuum seal bags, and it lasts all winter. This recipe does.
Too, right there, that picture you've got. That's like.
Yeah, that's classic.
And like when someone was just asking here, do you find asparagus in Central Oregon? I would say it's probably more like that Central Eastern. Yeah, it's going to be like.
We drive across Oregon, and I have several big patches marked in my GPS that we've driven past. Yeah. And like, I always GPS spots.
In particular are just often loaded. Irrigation ditches are often loaded. But anyway, I want to move forward just because I want to make sure I get to a couple more things. So I just wanted to mention a couple quote unquote invasive species that are worth mentioning, i.e. dandelions. I think I might skip violets, or do you want to talk about them real fast?
Let's skip them. We've only got 5 minutes left.
We'll talk about violet some other day. So dandelions, you'll probably be weeding. This is one of the most amazing plants to be foraging for, in my opinion. It has so many uses, but we collect the roots here. We roast them. We use them for a coffee substitute. You can make tea. You can candy them. You can make wine with the flowers and or roots. Leaves, you can make salads, juice. Buds, we've done capers with them. The health benefits of dandelions are they're anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, antifungal, urinary tract support, digestive support, liver tonic, high in vitamins A, B, C, and minerals like iron, zinc, and potassium. Super, super healthy for you. So just make sure you're not picking them in places someone sprayed Roundup. I am much more of a fan of eating the weeds than spraying for weeds on so many levels, but they're also just medicine sitting in our backyard. And yeah, especially in these sorts of times, I think it's really important to be eating things like dandelion roots. We also get a lot of dead nettles here in our backyard. I've got a little bit of one somewhere in here, maybe. Yep.
Trent, pan back.
They look like a little
Trent,
bit like
pan.
mint.
There you go.
And they have this kind of purplish top to them. And they have these cute little purple flowers. They're kind of like spiky. Can you see that inside?
It's a little blurry.
I don't know if you can see. Look up pictures of dead nettle online. But they're related to mint. Really common. You'll see them all over the Northwest, Colorado. They kind of look like mugwort a little bit. Dead nettles, you know, I use them a lot like nettles. You can use them for pestos, tea. It's an anti-inflammatory, antibacterial, antifungal. Milk thistle, just one I would mention too when you're going to be weeding those. One of my favorite things to do with them, you can see that one in the back.
Yeah. What is this one here?
Yeah, milk thistle. If you juice it, our great friend Katrina Blair, she just throws it through the blender with some lemon juice, strains it, makes a great lemonade. It's like an all-over liver tonic, promotes skin health, reduces cholesterol, reduces insulin resistance, improves allergic asthma.
What is it called?
Milk thistle.
Spread of cancers, as well as the flowers, since they're related to artichokes. You can kind of roast those up and make little mini artichoke hearts. The seeds are really medicinal as well. So yeah, one of the things I wanted to mention is there's our good friend's book. It's called Wisdom of Weeds, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to grab it, Kristen?
I don't know where it is, to be
It's in the
honest.
bookshelf.
I'll go look for it.
It's in the bookshelf.
A lot of stuff this is commonly in your backyard. That's kind of something that, like, you know, you don't have to go anywhere to do foraging sometimes. Like, I think we all have this idea we got to get way out into the deep woods. I think that, you know, there's a lot of things even in your backyard that are pretty incredible. So yeah, The Wisdom of Weeds by Katrina Blair. Really incredible book if you want to just like learn more about all the little wild wisdom of weeds.
Hi, Katrina. We love you.
Yes.
Wisdom of Weeds. Can you all see this? Hopefully.
It has a lot of info about how to, like, you know, help take care of your immune system.
So, Graham, we've only got like 2 minutes left. So what would be the
Trent,
best topic
What happens
to talk
in
about?
2 minutes? Do we turn into pumpkins?
No, do you want to go over?
I mean, you know, I'm just saying. If we have
Anybody, Jay?
questions, it's okay.
So, other shout out really quick is our good friend Eugenia Bone wrote this wonderful book called Microphilia. It's about your immune system. Health is connected to your gut health as well as your microbiome. So I really do believe when we're talking about like trying to stay healthy right now, keeping our immune systems healthy, that book's really incredible. Yeah, taking care of your immune system, I think, like, it's not going to happen overnight. We all have to, like, constantly be there it is. Revelations of the World of Mushrooms. So she's got that one, and then she's got the one Mycophilia, which would be about bacteria as well.
Oh, this is mycophilia.
Yeah, she's got both. Both of them are amazing. I would check those books out. Here, just personally at home, we've all been eating a lot more raw vegetables, less processed sugars, lots of leafy greens like dandelions, probiotic foods such as yogurt, sauerkraut, drinking June kombucha, a lot of probiotics. Keeping your gut healthy and keeping your microbiome healthy during this time, I think, is really important. We also personally here are taking a lot of mushroom tinctures with adaptogens, as well as immune system support with antivirals. A lot of those I'm just going to mention really fast: cordyceps, reishi, turkey tail, chaga, artist conch. Mixing them, do it. Like, this is the time for these things. So if you're having trouble getting a hold of those, we can also supply some resources after this on how to get your hands on some of those things. I personally have one that we've been doing called Spirit Seed Immune Support Mycoblend.
Kristen, you have to talk.
Yeah, so, and it's just something that we personally take every day. I think that, the way that we can help ourselves right now and help each other around and everyone around us is by taking care of ourselves and our immune systems, especially our friends and family's immune systems. On that note, there's an amazing paper. We're going to share the notes by Dr. Stephen Herod Bruner. He's an herbal medicine doctor. He has a paper called The Herbal Treatment for Coronavirus Infections. If you want to check it out, if that's something you're interested in learning more about, that is an amazing paper, and I want to share that resource. There's also a link there to Paul Stamets' patent, which is just going to cover like all the antiviral properties of mushrooms. In particular, they discuss coronaviruses and SARS in that patent. So that's kind of near the bottom of the page if you have to scroll way down. But both of those are amazing resources that I just wanted to share with everyone, and take with your own.
Graham, what's the name? We have a question about the Spirit Seeds tincture.
Here, it's right here. If you guys can see, I'll talk this time. It's called.
Getting some of these, just PM me on Instagram. And
Spirit Seed Apothecary.
Yeah, and we're just about to launch our website. So yeah, we're probably ready to do another 60, 70 more of those. So if there's people who need those, I think keeping our immune systems healthy, keeping each other healthy. We do donation basis, so we don't want it to be something that money makes it hard, because I know everyone's in a predicament right now. I'm a chef, so I've been home for a while now with no money flow. But yeah, I really appreciate any kind of help. We also have a donation page if you just want to help donate to our cause, that I can PM you if you PM me on Instagram.
Okay, we have a question from Ira, a little bit different. I like it though. It says, I went foraging last week as the Forest Service made a post that the forest is open. On my way, I saw many signs that said, stay home, save lives, and was feeling guilty. I had no interactions along the way, and there was no one else picking. What do the panelists feel about this?
I have an opinion. I mean, I think that from what we're seeing in Washington, they're closing a lot of the infrastructure to our parks, i.e. like parking lots, picnic table areas. That kind of makes sense to me. And I think like trying to keep people congregating helps. But from what I've heard from, the Park Service message they're sending here is, look, like, we don't want to say don't come to the woods. I think that's a very healthy thing to do. I think they just want us to not be like interacting as much really close together. I mean, we went to a park here, Priest Point Park, and it was just like, it was upsetting how many people were not taking social distancing into consideration while we're all outside. I understand. I do think like, there's benefit to everyone being outside. I do think we all need to still be practicing our social distancing while we're doing that. And trying to be aware of other people around us, since some people could be immunocompromised or, you know, other things. But I personally think that that's one of the better places you could be right now, is outside in the woods.
Brooke on Facebook has a question. Do we have any concern with pesticide runoff picking asparagus in ditches?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Always take into consideration pesticides and pollution when you're picking, because, you know, mushrooms and plants hyperaccumulate toxic heavy metals and pesticides. I still would say, though, that I trust it a lot more than I trust something that's even being sold at a grocery store that's not organic, where I know something's been sprayed on it. Because in the wild, it's probably way less, but I guarantee you we could show examples of that not being the case. So I would just always say, like, yeah, do be wary of that. Mine tailing ponds, things of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah, we avoid, you know, with mushrooms, any place where they might be collecting like heavy metals. I think the sides of railroad tracks bother me probably more than the side of farm fields. And I don't like to pick asparagus like next to the highway. I do believe there's a lot of air pollution that gets on plants. But that said, I pick a lot of asparagus. I don't worry about it too much, but I avoid problem areas.
Yeah. Same. And I mean, like, I've eaten mushrooms out of city parks that I'm like,
Yeah.
I see a lot of weeds, and, you know, all the weeds look healthy and doesn't seem like a dog peed on it. It's a delicious mushroom.
Yeah.
I just picked it and ate it. Like,
Yeah, here's one. Here's one I get all the time. It's a good question. Any concern with fire retardant dropped from planes in burn areas?
yes. I don't know if there's official studies, but I would be wary of it. And at least be aware that there could be areas that were completely covered in those salts, or whatever they use.
Mm-hmm. It is some sort of salt.
I think it is salts.
I've never actually seen the red retardant. Have you seen it, Trent, that you can think of? You've seen it.
The ones that drop.
Not in the next year.
Another thing to note is mag chloride in Colorado that's dumped to de-ice roads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agaricus bernardii, which was actually it's the salt-loving agaricus known from California, grows on the coast because of the ocean. It loves salt. Well, now we're finding it all over Colorado because we're dumping mag chloride everywhere, and it likes the mag chloride. We still haven't been able to, as far as I know, find toxic mushrooms that have absorbed too much magnesium, even despite that they're absorbing it. So I do wonder as to, like, even if they absorb it, is it still toxic? But I wouldn't like want to say it's not, because that's probably not true.
Yeah, all stuff to be careful of, but I guess we're all on the same page of we still feel a lot more in control picking our food from the wild than buying it in the store. It is more powerful.
Hey, one bit of exciting news from Orion Aon. He just got a picture of some landscape morels in Colorado today, found in Denver. First Colorado morels he's seen this year. Thanks for sharing, Orion. Yeah. And also, Graham, another comment. Somebody would love to see your chefing skills, recipes, and uses. So maybe next time we can join you in the kitchen with your garden
love to do that.
stuff.
Yeah, we can do a little cooking demonstration. I've got plenty of dried mushrooms. And check out my Instagram. You can always see there's a bunch of recipes on there. And you can also, you know, always hit me up on there. I can send you some things.
Cool.
I don't know if you wanted to mention it too, but you have got some exciting news.
We do? Oh, we do. Well, Trent and I are working on a cookbook of sorts that contains Forager Stories with all of the friends we've been talking about, Graham and Eugenia and Orion. That's going to have about 100 recipes, I think, or so, of wild foraged mushrooms. So yeah, we're under deadline here, and hopefully we'll see that book out maybe October of this year. Fingers crossed.
It goes to the publisher like next week.
Yeah, thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Yeah, it's really exciting. There's a bunch of amazing people that helped with this book.
Yeah,
It's
it is
super
pretty cool.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel like though that we have some questions still flowing in, but I think we're going to need to call it here. This webinar will be posted online through the link that you have originally. You can go watch it again. It will be on Facebook Live, and we'll probably put it on YouTube. So if you watch probably tomorrow, we'll have it out for anybody that wants to see it or if you want to share it.
Yeah, and if you have more questions than you didn't get answered, you're absolutely welcome to message me or Trent or Kristen. We're happy to answer them. I mean, especially when we're on quarantine.
Message Graham. Message Graham.
Yeah, message me.
Instagramster.
Yep. Instant.
Like
Instant Gramster. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for attending this. And it was awesome to be able to talk mushrooms and talk about the things we love with everyone.
Yes.
So
thanks for coming on, Graham. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Graham.
Hopefully we'll see you in the kitchen next time.
Yes, of course.
Sweet. Okay.
Bye,
Bye-bye,
everyone.
everybody.
See you next week.
Stay safe out there.